First contact and miscalculation. The bridge of the Imperial warship. Dominator hummed with the efficient sounds of conquest preparation. Admiral Zixtar stood before the main view screen, his forearms clasped behind his crystalline form as he studied, the blue planet rotating slowly in the distance. After 3,000 years of expansion, the Galactic Empire had encountered its 10,000th inhabited world. Status report, Zixtar commanded, his voice resonating through the translator implants of his diverse crew. Planet designation Sol 3, Admiral, reported Science Officer Krelmach, her tentacles dancing across multiple control panels. Atmosphere composition suitable for most Imperial species. Population approximately 8 billion sentients. Technology, level primitive. Nuclear fission achieved limited space travel within their system. No evidence of faster-than-light capability. Zixtar's mandibles clicked in satisfaction. Another easy addition to the Empire's vast territories. The protocol was simple and had worked thousands of times before. Arrive, demonstrate overwhelming superiority, accept surrender. Integrate the new species into the Empire's hierarchy. Classification? He asked. Class 2 civilization, sir. Minimal resistance expected. They still use projectile weapons and combustion-based vehicles. Their military forces are divided among nearly 200 separate governing bodies. The Admiral turned to his tactical display. The 7th Imperial Conquest Fleet consisted of 50 warships, each capable of devastating entire continents. Against such primitive technology, even a single destroyer would suffice. But the Empire never took chances. Deploy standard conquest formation. Send Ambassador Velnox to deliver our terms. Within hours, the massive Imperial fleet positioned itself in Earth's orbit, their ships casting shadows across entire countries. Panic spread across the planet as every broadcasting system simultaneously displayed the same message. Representatives of Earth were to gather at the United Nations headquarters to receive the Galactic Empire's terms. Ambassador Velnox descended in a shuttle that gleamed like polished obsidian, landing in the plaza before the UN building. The Vorthak diplomat stood 3 meters tall, his scaled hide shifting through various colors as he adjusted to Earth's atmosphere. His 6 eyes surveyed the gathered human leaders with practiced disdain. Inside the General Assembly Hall, Velnox's translator converted his words into every Earth language simultaneously. Beings of Sol 3, you have the honor of joining the Galactic Empire. Your planet's resources and population will serve the greater good of galactic civilization. Surrender is not merely advised, it is inevitable. You have 1 planetary rotation to accept. The human representatives exchanged glances. Secretary General Elena Rodriguez stood, her voice steady despite the magnitude of the moment. We thank you for this opportunity, Ambassador. However, Earth's nations need time to discuss your proposal. We have a few questions about the terms. Terms? Velnox's scales flickered to deep purple, a sign of amusement. There are no negotiations. You surrender unconditionally, or we demonstrate why 10,000 worlds before you made the wise choice. And if we refuse? Asked General David Mitchell, the American representative. The ambassador's translator buzzed with what might have been laughter. Refuse? Your weapons cannot penetrate our shields. Your fastest vehicles cannot match our slowest transports. Your strongest materials crumble before our mining beams. Refusal is not an option available to you. Rodriguez stepped forward. Ambassador Velnox, humanity has a long history of defending our freedom. We've fought against overwhelming odds before. We respectfully decline your offer and request that you leave our solar system. The silence that followed seemed to stretch across space itself. Velnox's scales shifted to a deep crimson. No Class 2 civilization had ever refused the initial offer. It was unprecedented. It was insulting. So be it, he hissed. You have chosen extinction. As the ambassador's shuttle departed, Admiral Zixtar received the news with disbelief. A primitive species had refused surrender. His tactical officers were equally puzzled. The combat algorithms perfected over millennia had no protocol for this scenario. Class 2 civilizations always surrendered when faced with the Empire's might. Begin standard suppression protocol, Zixtar ordered. Target their military installations first. Major population centers second. Leave enough survivors to serve as an example. The first wave of attack craft descended on Earth like a metallic storm. Their primary target, Berlin, chosen for its symbolic significance and military infrastructure. The Imperial forces expected minimal resistance, perhaps some primitive projectile weapons easily deflected by their shields. Commander Tarvon led the ground assault, his mechanized troops marching through the streets in perfect formation. The humans had evacuated most civilians, leaving only military forces to face the invasion. Tarvon almost pitied them. Their chemical-propelled bullets bounced harmlessly off Imperial armor. Their vehicles were swatted aside like toys. Then something unexpected happened. An explosion rocked the Imperial formation, not from advanced weaponry but from improvised devices hidden in abandoned vehicles. Human soldiers appeared from concealed positions, targeting the joints and sensory arrays of Imperial armor with surprising accuracy. They moved unpredictably, using the urban environment in ways the Imperial forces hadn't anticipated. Squad 7, report. Tarvon barked into his communicator. Under heavy fire, Commander. The humans, they're not fighting like a Class 2 species. They're adapting to our tactics using the terrain. The transmission cut off in a burst of static. More reports flooded in. Human forces were employing guerrilla tactics, turning their technological disadvantage into an asset. They struck from shadows, disappeared into underground passages, and used their primitive weapons in creative ways the Imperial computers couldn't predict. In space, Admiral Zixtar monitored the ground assault with growing concern. The battle, for Berlin, which should have ended in minutes, stretched into hours. Human casualties were high, but so were Imperial losses, something unheard of when facing a Class 2 civilization. Admiral, Communications Officer Dexal reported, "We're detecting massive mobilization across the planet. The humans are sharing tactical data, coordinating globally. Their separate governments appear to be unifying." Zixtar's forearms tensed. Unity among primitives was dangerous. The Empire's conquests relied on exploiting divisions among planetary populations. But these humans were responding to invasion not with surrender or chaos, but with cooperation. On the ground, the situation deteriorated further. Human forces had captured several pieces of Imperial technology and were already attempting to reverse engineer them. Their scientists worked with desperate efficiency, sharing findings across continents in real time. Colonel Sarah Chen of the Chinese People's Liberation Army examined a fallen Imperial warrior's weapon. "The power source is incredibly advanced," she told her team, "but the basic principles, we can work with this." Within hours, human forces began fielding improvised weapons based on captured Imperial tech. They were crude and unreliable, but they worked. For the first time, Imperial shields flickered under human fire. Captain James Thompson of the British SAS led a strike team through the rubble of Berlin. They had learned to target Imperial communication nodes, disrupting the enemy's coordinated responses. "They relied too heavily on their tech," he observed. "Take that away and they're just bigger targets." The humans also discovered that Imperial forces struggled with unpredictability. Their combat algorithms, refined over millennia, expected enemies to fight in logical patterns. Human irregulars threw bottles filled with flammable liquid, used mirrors to blind Imperial sensors, and even employed trained dogs to carry explosives into enemy formations. As night fell over Berlin, Commander Tarvon requested reinforcements. His mechanized division had suffered 40% casualties, an impossibility according to Imperial doctrine. The humans had turned their city into a death trap, using their inferior technology with creativity that defied all predictions. Admiral Zixtar faced a dilemma no Imperial commander had encountered in generations. The humans were inflicting actual damage on his forces. Their resistance was not only continuing but intensifying. Reports came in from other assault sites. New York, Moscow, Tokyo, everywhere, the pattern repeated. Humans fought with a ferocity and adaptability that their technology level shouldn't have permitted. "Analysis of enemy tactics," Zixtar demanded. "Sir," the tactical AI responded. Human combat behavior defies classification. They exhibit individual initiative beyond expected parameters. They sacrifice themselves to protect others. They improvise weapons from civilian equipment. They seem to become more dangerous when cornered. As the first day of invasion drew to a close, a troubling realization settled over the Imperial command. They had encountered something their vast empire hadn't faced in millennia. A species that refused to accept the logic of surrender, that grew stronger under pressure, that turned weakness into strength. The Galactic Empire had made a critical error. They had classified humans based on their technology. They had failed to account for something that couldn't be measured by sensors or calculated by algorithms: the human spirit, forged in thousands of years of conflict, shaped by survival against odds, and unified by the greatest threat their species had ever faced. The turning point and retreat dawn broke over a changed Earth. In underground bunkers and hidden laboratories, human scientists worked frantically on captured Imperial technology. Dr. James Liu led a multinational team in Singapore. Their efforts, coordinated with similar groups worldwide. The shield generators use a frequency modulation we've never seen, Liu explained to his team. But the underlying physics, it's not incomprehensible. Look here. If we adjust our particle accelerators to match this resonance pattern, within 18 hours of the invasion's start, humanity achieved something the Imperial forces deemed impossible. They created functional, if primitive, energy weapons. The first successful test in Nevada sent shockwaves through both human and Imperial ranks. Admiral Zixtar received the report with disbelief. A Class II civilization reverse-engineered our technology in less than a planetary rotation? That's not possible. But the evidence was undeniable. Human forces in North America had fielded energy weapons against Imperial positions. They were crude, requiring massive power sources, but they worked. More concerning, the humans were improving, the designs with each iteration. On Earth, an unprecedented transformation was occurring. Ancient enemies set aside grievances. Resources flowed freely across former borders. The United States shared its stealth technology with China. Russia provided nuclear materials to European nations. Israel and Iran coordinated cyber warfare strategies. Faced with extinction, humanity discovered unity. General Rodriguez, now leading Earth's unified command, coordinated the global resistance from a bunker beneath the Swiss Alps. The aliens expect us to fight like they do, with rigid tactics and predictable strategies. We'll give them chaos instead. The strategy worked brilliantly. Human forces employed tactics that seemed insane to Imperial commanders. Soldiers strapped explosives to themselves and ran into enemy formations. Civilians turned vehicles into rams, crashing into Imperial walkers. Hackers, working from basements and internet cafes, probed Imperial networks with relentless creativity. Lieutenant Maya Patel of the Indian Cyber Command achieved the first major breakthrough. Imperial communication systems, designed to resist sophisticated AI attacks, had no defense against human pattern recognition and intuition. Patel found a vulnerability, not in the code, but in the timing of transmissions. "Got you," she whispered, initiating a program that injected false data into Imperial tactical networks. Across the globe, Imperial forces began receiving contradictory orders. Units fired on empty positions. Supply drops landed in human-controlled areas. The perfect coordination that had conquered 10,000 worlds dissolved into confusion. The nuclear option came next. Imperial doctrine stated that primitive nuclear weapons posed no threat to their shields. The calculations were correct for standard nuclear weapons. But human nuclear engineers, given days to innovate, modified their weapons with insights gained from captured Imperial technology. When the first enhanced nuclear device detonated over an Imperial staging ground in the Australian outback, the result stunned both sides. The explosion, channeled through improvised focusing arrays based on Imperial designs, punched through shields that should have been impervious. Admiral Zixtar's crystalline form actually cracked, a physiological stress response his species rarely experienced. "How?" he demanded. "They've had nuclear weapons for less than a century. They shouldn't be able to—" "Sir," Science Officer Krelmack interrupted, her tentacles trembling. Their innovation rate is unprecedented. They're not just copying our technology, they're combining it with their own in ways our models never predicted. The war room fell silent as data streams showed human forces deploying increasingly effective weapons. Improvised railguns using Imperial power cells, chemical weapons that corroded Imperial armor, biological agents tailored to alien physiologies. Each hour brought new surprises, new impossibilities made real by human ingenuity. The psychological impact on Imperial forces proved devastating. Soldiers who had conquered worlds without taking casualties found themselves afraid. The humans seemed to grow stronger with each defeat, more creative with each setback. They fought without regard for survival, yet somehow survived. They lacked resources, yet somehow found alternatives. Commander Tarvon, his mechanized division reduced to 30% strength, sent a report that would have been considered treason days before. Recommend immediate withdrawal. The humans are learning too fast. They're turning our advantages against us. My soldiers are beginning to fear them. Fear. The word itself was almost unknown in Imperial military vocabulary, yet it spread through the ranks like a virus. Stories circulated of human berserkers who fought on despite mortal wounds, of human engineers who built weapons from scrap, of human children who sabotaged Imperial equipment. The tipping point came when humanity unveiled its masterstroke. Working together, Earth's nations had constructed massive electromagnetic pulse weapons, scaled up from captured Imperial designs. When these weapons fired simultaneously from hidden positions around the globe, they created a resonance effect that temporarily disrupted all Imperial technology on and near Earth. For crucial minutes, the technological advantage disappeared. Imperial soldiers, dependent on their powered armor and tactical networks, found themselves nearly helpless. Human forces, trained for such conditions, struck with coordinated fury. In hand-to-hand combat, humans proved terrifyingly effective. Evolution on a death world had given them dense bones, efficient muscles, and most importantly, the ability to continue fighting through pain and exhaustion that would incapacitate most galactic species. Private Alex Murphy of the U.S. Marines found himself face-to-face with an Imperial shock trooper twice his size. Without powered armor, the alien was still formidable, but not invincible. Murphy's combat knife found gaps in the creature's natural armor, while his smaller size and agility let him avoid crushing blows. When he stood victorious, covered in purple blood, nearby human forces actually cheered. Such scenes repeated across the planet. Imperial forces, stripped of their technological superiority, discovered that humans were apex predators on their own world. Worse, humans seemed to treat warfare as a puzzle to be solved, each engagement teaching them new ways to kill. Admiral Zixtar watched his tactical displays with something approaching despair. Projections that had shown easy victory now predicted mutual annihilation. The humans had suffered millions of casualties but kept fighting. His own forces, psychologically shattered by unexpected resistance, were beginning to break. "Sir," Communications Officer Dexal reported, voice strained. "The Imperial Senate is demanding an update. Other fleet commanders are concerned about our situation." Concerned. Another euphemism for an emotion the Empire rarely acknowledged. If word spread that a primitive species had stalemated an Imperial fleet, the effects on galactic stability would be catastrophic. Other conquered worlds might take inspiration. The Empire's foundation, inevitable victory, would crack. The final blow came from an unexpected source. Human children, working with their school's computer clubs, had been analyzing captured Imperial entertainment devices. These seemingly harmless items contained references to the Empire's central administrative protocols. The children, treating it as a game, found backdoors that Imperial security experts had overlooked for millennia. When 12-year-old Yuki Tanaka of Osaka uploaded what she thought was a harmless virus to mess with the aliens' videos, she unknowingly triggered a cascade failure in the Imperial fleet's central computer. Navigation systems flickered. Weapons targeting became erratic. Life support systems began cycling randomly. Admiral Zixtar faced a choice no Imperial commander had contemplated in 3,000 years: retreat or face complete destruction. His crystalline form dulled with the weight of decision. The Empire had never retreated from a Class II civilization. But then, no Class II civilization had ever fought like humans. All forces, he commanded, his voice heavy with unprecedented defeat. Initiate emergency withdrawal protocol. Full retreat to minimum safe distance. The order sent shockwaves through the Imperial fleet. Retreat? From primitives? But as casualty reports continued mounting and human resistance grew ever more creative, even the most militant commanders saw no alternative. As Imperial ships began their withdrawal, human forces pressed their advantage. Improvised surface-to-orbit weapons, impossible according to Imperial science, sent parting shots after the retreating fleet. Several smaller vessels actually suffered critical damage, a final impossibility in a battle full of them. Earths united. Command watched the alien fleet retreat beyond lunar orbit. The celebration was muted. Millions had died. Cities lay in ruins, and everyone knew the aliens might return. But humanity had achieved the impossible. They had forced the Galactic Empire to retreat. In his private quarters aboard the Dominator, Admiral Zixtar prepared his report to the Imperial Senate. How could he explain that a species using chemical propulsion and projectile weapons had somehow pushed back the Empire's finest fleet? How could he describe beings who grew stronger when they should have broken, who turned primitive technology into effective weapons through sheer creativity? The classification system would need updating. Humans weren't Class II, despite their technology. They weren't even Class 5, the highest threat level. They were something new, something outside the Empire's experience. Computer, Zixtar commanded. Create new classification. Species, human. Threat level, unprecedented. Warning, do not engage without overwhelming superiority. Addendum, technological classification irrelevant. Species possesses anomalous ability to innovate under pressure. Recommend immediate quarantine of Sol system. As the Imperial fleet jumped to hyperspace, leaving Earth's solar system behind, a new legend began spreading through the galaxy. The Empire had encountered something unprecedented, a species that refused to accept defeat, that turned weakness into strength, that fought not just with weapons but with unbreakable spirit. On Earth, humanity began rebuilding, now united as never before. They had learned they weren't alone in the universe. More importantly, they had learned that together they could face any threat, even from the stars. The Galactic Empire would remember this day. The day they learned that some species couldn't be conquered, the day they met humanity, the day they ran